He stood in the paddock, visor up, no excuses, and quietly said the words no champion ever wants to admit, mentally, "I'm not okay." For a driver who once ruled Formula One with surgical precision, to fall in Q2 twice in one weekend is not just unusual, it's historic. What happened in Interlagos wasn't a technical failure. It was a breakdown of trust between man and machine. And behind that red suit is a legend now looking for answers that Ferrari still cannot provide. This wasn't frustration after a crash. This wasn't a rant after a strategy error. This was something more personal, more revealing, a sign that the foundations of confidence are starting to shift. Lewis Hamilton, who once dominated entire seasons through mental discipline and laser focus, is now confronting a different kind of opponent: uncertainty. Not within himself, but within the car that was meant to elevate him. And for the first time in his Ferrari chapter, he allowed the world to see what that weight feels like. Interlagos should have been a turning point. After weeks of limitations, the sprint weekend offered a fresh format, a chance to reset. Hamilton delivered in the sprint race, climbing from 11th to 7th with clinical overtakes and signature aggression. The car, briefly, seemed alive. The team sensed progress. But when the main qualifying session arrived on Saturday, that progress vanished. Cold tires, dead rear grip, a P13 finish. No mistakes on the lap, just a car that refused to respond. The most haunting part? This wasn't new. The same thing had happened 24 hours earlier in the sprint shootout. A second Q2 exit. Same issue. Same driver. Same silence from the SF25's rear axle. And in a sport where patterns matter more than promises, the trend is undeniable. Hamilton is not lacking performance. He is being let down by machinery that cannot meet his input. And that becomes exhausting, not physically, but psychologically. Ferrari had spent the only free practice session running hard tires. No real data on the softs. No chance to understand thermal behavior in the actual track conditions. They arrived at qualifying blind. And for a driver who spent years fine-tuning preparation down to the millisecond at Mercedes, that kind of uncertainty is corrosive. When you know the performance isn't there, and worse, when you know it could have been avoided, disappointment turns inward. Not because you doubt yourself, but because you expected better from the team around you. And so, in 30 minutes of on-track action, we learned more than we did in 20 races. Not about pace, not about tire wear, but about pressure. The pressure of carrying the weight of Ferrari's expectations. The pressure of honoring a legacy while fighting uphill every weekend. And most of all, the pressure of continuing to believe, when belief is the only thing left. Saturday's main qualifying session at Interlagos was not lost in one sector. It was lost in the garage, hours before the track went green. For Lewis Hamilton, the path to Q2 elimination didn't begin with a braking error or a poorly timed outlap. It began with a car that never reached the correct thermal window and a preparation plan that failed to adapt to the real conditions on the ground. The moment he crossed the line, his body language said it all. The lap had been clean. But clean wasn't enough. Not when the tires never woke up. The most striking aspect of the session was how quickly it unraveled. In Q1, Hamilton advanced without major issues. But even then, the SF25 showed signs of nervousness. The rear was unstable through turn 4. The traction zones lacked bite. There were micro-corrections into Junqiao that, on replay, showed a car teetering at the edge of adhesion. Those weren't aggressive driving mistakes. They were compensation responses to a chassis that wouldn't settle. And when conditions cooled further in Q2, that instability evolved into outright underperformance. The Ferrari simply could not generate enough energy into the soft compound. The C4 tires demand load. They need mechanical flex and vertical pressure to activate the grip phase. But Hamilton's car lacked both. The SF25 was skating through corners that should have been stable. Every exit was tentative. Every rotation demanded more steering angle than ideal. And on a qualifying lap, those micro losses add up quickly. By the time the stopwatch froze at 1 minute, 10 seconds, and 49 thousandths, Hamilton was out. Again. Critically, he was 3/10 slower than his teammate Charles Leclerc on the same compound. That gap raises questions. Not about talent. Hamilton's record speaks louder than ever, but about setup execution. Were the outlap protocols different? Was the tire prep symmetrical? Did the team apply what it learned from Friday's sprint shootout? If so, the results say they did not learn enough. Because while Leclerc squeaked through to Q3, Hamilton was left 13th on the grid, a brutal reflection of how fine margins become career headlines. The preparation window was already compressed by the sprint format. 1 hour of practice. That was it. And Ferrari chose to spend that entire hour running hard compound tires. In theory, that preserved softs for qualifying. In practice, it left them with no real-world data on how those tires would behave in cool, late afternoon conditions. Hamilton entered qualifying with minimal information. His engineers were working from projection, not from experience. And when the circuit demanded clarity, all Ferrari had was noise. What emerged was a scenario no top driver wants, a machine that looked fast in simulations but failed to deliver under stress. This wasn't about Lewis pushing too hard or taking the wrong line. It was about a car that could not offer a competitive lap window when the moment arrived. The tools were not aligned with the task. And as the sport knows well, when you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. In Formula One, performance is no longer unlocked in the corners, it's unlocked in the margins. Tire temperature, energy transfer, vertical load response, these aren't background variables anymore, they're the foundation of lap time. And at Interlagos, the Ferrari SF25 failed in the most fundamental area of all, rear tire activation. The team's data showed promise. Their models projected a competitive spread. But as the track evolved, it became painfully clear that the car's design concept could not support the tire's thermal requirements. The root of the problem lies in how the SF25 generates grip. It's a chassis built around aerodynamic stability. A strong underfloor. A firm platform. A narrow operating window designed for high-speed performance. On paper, that makes sense in a ground effect era. But in practice, especially in qualifying trim under cooler conditions, it creates a car that struggles to engage its tires. The suspension is stiff. The load transfer is delayed. The rear tires never receive the mechanical deformation they need to wake up. And if the tires don't activate, the car slides. When it slides, it loses heat. And the cycle never ends. Interlagos magnifies those weaknesses. Sector 1 demands early traction, especially exiting turn 3. Sector 2 requires rotation stability under braking, with elevation change that stresses the rear axle. Sector 3, though flat, needs rear-end confidence for the final acceleration zone. In all three, Hamilton was fighting the car. He wasn't overdriving. He was waiting for a car to rotate, to hold, to deliver torque to a tire that simply wasn't ready. His throttle traces were smooth. His braking points precise. But the car was lagging behind his inputs. The engineers later confirmed what the data already implied. The SF25 had entered qualifying with too conservative a thermal profile. Brake ducts too closed. Outlap too short. Preparation too timid. And that's where the setup hurt most. Unlike race trim, where tires naturally build heat over laps, qualifying is immediate. One lap. One chance. No recovery window. And Ferrari, despite knowing this, treated the session like a simulation run. Hamilton was given a tool that was 5 degrees outside its activation range. That's not bad luck. That's structural misjudgment. What makes this even more frustrating is that the issue was known. This wasn't a surprise. Ferrari had faced the same thermal problems in Bahrain's early sessions. In Zandvoort. In Canada. Even in Suzuka's FP1. The car doesn't like low grip, doesn't adapt quickly, and punishes the driver when tire temperature falls even slightly outside target. And Hamilton, precise by nature, becomes trapped. He can't drive around a thermal deficit. No one can. So every qualifying becomes a gamble, not against the field, but against the engineering reality of the SF25. In this context, Hamilton's Q2 elimination wasn't a driver failure. It was a systems failure. A breakdown in how the car communicates energy to the tires. A car can only go as fast as its contact patch allows. And if the rear wheels aren't fully engaged, the stopwatch will expose you. That's what happened in Brazil. And Hamilton, a master of racecraft, timing and control, found himself with a machine built for simulation glory, not real-world speed.